Joining us, I'm Eric Ham, and this is Firstpost America. And today, more on the growing conflict between Iran and Israel. And now, U.S. military intervention looms large as the conflict enters another week. More on that soon, but first, a look at the latest headlines. Sweden's government says it has secured cross-party support in parliament for a major increase in defense spending amid growing U.S. pressure on Europe to shoulder more security responsibilities. Finland's parliament votes to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel landmines, citing growing military threats from neighboring Russia. Norway's central bank makes a surprise rate cut, lowering interest rates by a quarter point to 4.25%, citing economic uncertainty from trade tensions and global conflicts. South Korea's new administration proposes $14.7 billion in extra government spending to support sluggish domestic demand as economic recovery takes top priority. And Alphabet's Google faces a potential setback as an advisor to Europe's top court sides with the EU antitrust regulators and the tech giant's challenge to a record $4.98 billion fine imposed 7 years ago. The Israel-Iran conflict continues and the violence is escalating fast. But what began as a cross-border strikes has now turned into direct hits on military, civilian, and nuclear sites, with rising casualties and high-stakes diplomacy now underway. Early Thursday, Iran launched a series of missile attacks on Israel, striking 4 major locations across central and southern parts of the country. One of the most serious hits came near Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, a key medical facility that treats wounded soldiers from the Gaza conflict. Iran claimed the hospital was an Israeli military and intelligence base, not a health facility. Israeli officials confirmed that a building adjacent to the hospital was hit, causing significant structural damage. Medical crews searched for anyone possibly trapped under debris, while Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed that Iran would, quote, pay a heavy price after the hospital strike. Preliminary reports suggest that around 25 people have been injured.
You can see behind me, I am on the scene where a missile struck right in the center of a building complex. We have 5 buildings that were hit by the missile. We have one which is the main building and all the other ones surrounding it, which were partially hit as well. We are currently evacuating minimal amount of patients.
Another Iranian missile struck the Holland area in Tel Aviv. One building reportedly collapsed, and emergency services says one person is seriously injured and over 24 others suffered minor injuries. Sirens were also heard across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as multiple explosions rocked central Israel.
Tonight's missile strike demonstrated that we have achieved full dominance over the skies of the occupied territories, and that their residents are now entirely defenseless against Iranian missile attacks.
Now, in response, Israel launched airstrikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure, and Israeli jets targeted the Arak heavy water reactor in southwest Tehran. The facility, which plays a role in Iran's nuclear program, had been evacuated before the strike, and Iranian officials said there was no radiation risk.
There is no contamination in the region, as since a long time ago necessary safety measures had been taken. The site had been evacuated and no human casualties have been reported, fortunately. Also, no residential have been hit, and civilian areas remain unharmed.
Meanwhile, both sides trading blows. All eyes are on President Donald Trump as he weighs whether to involve the U.S. military. Now, he's reportedly told his advisors that he would only approve a strike on Iran if the GBU-57 bunker buster bomb could guarantee the destruction of Iran's deeply buried Fordow uranium enrichment site.
Ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war, things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war.
The U.S. Embassy in Qatar, meanwhile, has limited access to its massive Udeid Air Base and advised staff to stay alert. Iran has threatened to strike U.S. assets if Washington does join Israel in its military campaign.
America getting involved in this would be 100% to its detriment. The damage it would suffer would be much more than what Iran would possibly suffer. The damage to America, if it gets militarily involved, would be an irreparable damage, no doubt.
Now, since the conflict began last Friday, the toll is grim. Over 240 people have been killed in Iran due to Israeli attacks, including 70 women and children. And at least 24 people have died in Israel in the latest Iranian missile strikes. With military targets expanding and diplomatic choices now narrowing, the conflict is entering a dangerous new phase. The question now is not whether the fighting will continue, but how far will it in fact go? And now shifting focus to the United States, divisions are brewing inside President Trump's inner circle as questions grow over whether the U.S. will join Israel's campaign against Iran. With the Israel-Iran conflict entering its 7th day, the White House now faces a domestic firestorm, and it's coming from within President Trump's own Make America Great Again base. Some of the most prominent voices behind the president's America First movement, including former aide Steve Bannon and conservative podcast host Tucker Carlson, have publicly warned against military intervention.
My mantra right now, the Israelis have to finish what they started. They started this. They should finish it. We can't do this again. We'll tear the country apart. We can't have another Iraq.
Tucker Carlson, in a contentious broadcast with Senator Ted Cruz, pressed the Texas Republican on why he called for the overthrow of Iran's government without knowing basic facts about the country.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You know the population of the country you seek to topple? You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government, and you don't know anything about the country.
And inside the White House, Tulsi Gabbard, the president's own spy chief, released an allegedly unapproved video warning that political elites are pushing the world towards nuclear annihilation. That move allegedly sparked frustration within the White House, and President Trump complaining that Gabbard spoke out of turn. The president also rejected Gabbard's assessment that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon while returning from the G7 in Canada earlier this week.
Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having.
Former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene have also called on the president to exercise restraint.
Foreign wars or intervention or regime change put America last, kill innocent people, are making us broke, and will ultimately lead to our destruction.
However, not everyone is against U.S. involvement in the Middle East. Republicans like Lindsey Graham has been pushing for a much more aggressive approach, reportedly urging the president to be all in, while even suggesting the U.S. should help replace Iran's leadership. Senator Rick Scott said anyone who cares about freedom should be grateful for President Trump's leadership.
Nuclear weapon, they've already said they're death to America. So they'll use a nuclear weapon. I don't think there's any ifs or buts about it.
And as for President Trump, he's keeping his next move under wraps. When asked if he'll strike Iranian nuclear facilities, he told reporters he may or may not do it. Trump also confirmed Iran has reached out for talks, but suggested that it might be too late.
I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate.
Meanwhile, recent polling showed only 19% of the president's supporters favor U.S. military action against Iran. Still, he dismissed concerns about losing support.
Supporters are more in love with me today, and I'm in love with them more than they were even at election time, where we had a total a landslide.
And with a divided base, a defiant cabinet, and global stakes rising by the day, the question now isn't just if President Trump will act, but whether his next move will unite or further splinter the movement he built. And while the president faces a potential MAGA uprising, Russian President Vladimir Putin has offered to step in to broker peace between Israel and Iran. Speaking at a roundtable with international news agencies on the sidelines of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Putin said Russia is ready to help negotiate a settlement. The Russian leader even proposed a framework that allows Iran to pursue peaceful nuclear energy while addressing Israel's deep-rooted security concerns. Putin described the situation as delicate, but insisted that a peaceful solution is in fact possible. He confirmed that Russia had already shared its ideas with Iran, Israel, and the United States, stressing that Moscow wasn't forcing anything, only laying out a potential path to de-escalation.
I think it would be appropriate for everyone to work together to look for ways to end the hostilities and to come to an agreement between all parties involved in the conflict in order to ensure both Iran's interests, on the one hand, in its nuclear activities, peaceful nuclear activities, of course, I mean both peaceful nuclear energy and peaceful use of nuclear technology in other areas, and to ensure Israel's interests in terms of the unconditional security of the Jewish state.
Now, Russia has long walked a tightrope in the Middle East, keeping warm relations with Israel while developing strong economic ties with Iran. And Putin's latest offer suggests Moscow wants to leverage that balancing act to play the role of mediator. Putin further emphasized that Russia was instrumental in building Iran's first nuclear power plant and is currently helping construct 2 more reactors. Over 200 Russian specialists remain on site. And according to Putin, Israel has assured Moscow that these workers will not be targeted in any strikes.
We have very good relations with Iran. We could continue this work and ensure their interests in this area. I will not go into details now, as there are many. All these details have been discussed with both the Israeli and American sides, and we have sent certain signals to our Iranian friends.
But when asked about the possibility of Israel, backed by the U.S., killing Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, a move floated by Israeli officials and even hinted at by President Trump, Putin drew a firm line. Calling such a scenario dangerous and destabilizing, Putin said, and I quote, "I don't even want to discuss that possibility," end quote. He added that recent developments in Iran showed the population was rallying around its leadership despite internal tensions.
If Israel, tomorrow, with the help of the U.S. or without it, kills Ali Khamenei, what will be Russia's reaction and your first actions?
Mr. Talbai, if you let me, I hope it will be the most accurate answer to your question. I don't even want to discuss such a possibility.
Meanwhile, President Trump on Wednesday said that he spoke with the Russian leader about the Middle East crisis. And during the call, he urged Putin to, quote unquote, mediate your own issues first. President Trump also criticized the Russia-Ukraine conflict, claiming it would have never happened under his presidency and suggested casualty numbers are significantly underreported.
You know, Russia-Ukraine is so stupid. Would have never happened if I was president. And I spoke to him yesterday and I said, you know, he actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later.
Now, despite having a strategic partnership treaty with Tehran, Putin clarified that Russia has not provided any new weapons to Iran, nor has Tehran formally asked for military help. In the past, Moscow offered to build a full-scale air defense system for Iran, but the proposal was declined.
We once offered our Iranian friends to work in the area of air defense systems. At that time, our partners did not show much interest. As for the agreement you mentioned about the strategic partnership, It does not contain any articles related to the defense sphere. That's the second point. Thirdly, our friends are not asking us for it.
But as airstrikes continue and diplomatic lines remain tense, one question looms larger than ever. Will anyone actually take Putin up on his offer before it's too late? For decades, Iran and Israel have stood on opposite sides of the Middle East's deepest divide. But this wasn't always the case. There was, in fact, a time before the 1979 revolution, before the sanctions, before the strikes, when the two countries worked together, quietly, strategically, and in secret. So what exactly happened? How did this so-called friends turn into adversaries? Now, as missiles fly and proxies clash, here's a look at how Iran and Israel's relationship unraveled.
It may be hard to imagine this today, but long before they traded missile strikes on each other, Iran and Israel were friends, as were Washington and Tehran. The year was 1948. Shiite nation of Iran under the regime of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi became one of the first Muslim nations after Turkey to recognize Israel. Tel Aviv regarded Iran as a strategic anchor in a region dominated by hostile Arab neighbors. For Tehran, Israel was a quiet back channel to Washington and a balancing force against Arab countries. Back channels reportedly buzzed with trade, oil and intelligence. Israel allegedly trained Iranian agricultural experts, supplied technical know-how, and helped build up and train the Iranian armed forces. The Iranian Shah supplied Israel with oil as its burgeoning economy was in need of fuel. Israel also established a de facto embassy in Tehran, and eventually the two nations exchanged ambassadors in the 1970s. Not only that, in private they allegedly focused on developing advanced missile systems and formed a trilateral spy network with Ankara called Trident. But then came 1979. The Shah of Iran was overthrown in a historic revolution, and a new Islamic Republic of Iran was born. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini and his revolutionaries scrapped all previous agreements with Israel. Khomeini directed fierce criticism at Israel for its occupation of Palestinian territories. Israel reportedly became known in Iran as the Little Satan to the Great Satan, that is, the US. Citizens could allegedly no longer travel between Israel and Iran, and flight routes were cancelled. Meanwhile, the Israeli embassy in Tehran was also reportedly transformed into the Palestinian embassy. But here's what didn't change: the need for survival. When Saddam Hussein invaded Iran in 1980, the new Islamic Republic turned to its old foe. In secret, Israel stepped in. Iran wanted to win a war, Israel wanted to weaken Iraq. Ideology took a backseat. But after the war, things reportedly changed. Iran allegedly adopted an increasingly harsh rhetoric towards Israel with the aim of winning the favor of regional Arab states. Besides, leaders in Tehran, especially Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the current supreme leader, questioned and denied Holocaust. The enmity grew over decades as both sides sought to cement and grow their power and influence across the region. Tehran's alleged support for a so-called resistance axis network of political and armed groups in several countries across the region, who also supported the Palestinian cause, further fueled the enmity. At the same time, Tel Aviv also began growing wary of Tehran's missile and nuclear program. Israel believes Iran's nuclear program is an existential threat, while Iran calls Israel a cancerous tumor. For decades now, they've been arch enemies, accusing each other of attacks, arming proxies, and allegedly stoking regional wars from Lebanon to Gaza to Syria. The current conflict between Iran and Israel, which rages on for the seventh day, is only worsening the enmity between the two countries, opening a new bloody chapter in the history of the two countries.
And today we end in Peru. In the bustling capital of Lima, a routine gas pipeline project has uncovered anything but routine. Beneath the city's modern streets, workers have stumbled upon a 1,000-year-old pre-Inca mummy. Believed to be a young woman from the ancient Chankay civilization, the extraordinary find has paused construction and opened a new window into Peru's rich and layered past. Our final report unearths the details of this amazing find.
In the heart of modern Lima, beneath layers of concrete and centuries of urban expansion, an ancient secret has come to light, quite literally. A routine gas pipeline installation in the Puente Piedra district of Peru's capital came to an unexpected halt when workers stumbled upon the remarkably preserved remains of a 1,000-year-old mummy, believed to be a young woman from the Chankay civilization. The discovery, announced by the Peruvian gas company Calita, has sent ripples through the archaeological community and captivated the nation. Workers digging trenches for natural gas expansion stopped operations immediately after unearthing signs of ancient human remains just 20 inches below the surface. Archaeologists were quickly called in to assess the find. What they uncovered was astonishing. A mummified woman, aged approximately 20 to 25, seated in a fetal-like position, wrapped in a bundle, and still bearing dark brown hair. An extraordinary preservation given the site's proximity to urban life.
During the excavations for laying natural gas networks in the Zapalal area in the district of Puente Piedra, a burial of a woman was identified. She was approximately 20 to 25 years old, belonging to the Chankay culture, and the mummy is estimated to be between 900 to 1,000 years old.
Artifacts found at the burial site included clay vessels and crustacean remains, providing clues that offer insight into her daily life and diet. Such items are commonly associated with funerary traditions of the Chankay people, who flourished in the region from around 1000 to 1470 CE.
It is oriented to the west, that is, towards the sea, facing the sea. It is accompanied by a trousseau characterized by jars, bottles, canteens, plates, bowls. In some of these plates and bowls, crustacean remains, such as crabs, have been found, which also helps us understand its connection with the sea and the diet this person consumed.
What makes the discovery even more remarkable is its location. It was found beneath what was once farmland, now transformed into a densely packed working-class neighborhood. Archaeologists say that the mummy had gone completely unnoticed despite all the construction and development in recent decades. Hence, it's a reminder that Lima's modern surface hides layers of deep history. Lima, with its 10 million residents, sits atop a valley nourished by 3 rivers flowing down from the Andes. Despite its sprawling urban landscape, the city is home to more than 400 archaeological sites, many of which remain partially or fully unexplored. Experts say that finding tombs, funerary bundles, and mummified individuals during public works is not uncommon. Experts say coastal mummies are often found dehydrated by heat, their skin naturally preserved by the arid environment, while there are some which were intentionally mummified and buried in traditional seated postures, often with hands covering the face. It is a ritualistic position symbolizing reverence and passage to the afterlife. As excavation teams continue to assess the site and preserve the newly unearthed artifacts, the mummy of the young Chankay woman serves as a poignant symbol, a reminder of the civilizations that lived, loved, and died long before Lima became the bustling metropolis it is today.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.